just for 5 minutes, we're going to just follow the flow of our breath going, with the flow of going in and out, in and out, in and out, rising, falling, rising, falling, rising, falling, rising and falling, rising, falling, rising and falling, rising and falling, rising and falling, rise, falling, rising and 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 falling, rise and fall, in and out, 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 in and out. Now for the next few minutes, just focus on your breath going in and out. Alright, you guys can come back to your breath, or come out of meditation. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to jump right into Devotional Chanting. And so we're going to sing a mantra. It's called Sitaram. And it's Sitaram. And what this mantra does is it harmonizes both the masculine and feminine energy that lies dormant within you guys. See, most people don't actually realize that we actually carry both the masculine and the feminine energy. Particularly, I would say most men, I don't want to pick on them, but they're, most of the time, where a lot of men are afraid to acknowledge that kind of feminine energy that exists within us. It's that nurturing energy that helps bring any kind of emotions and clarity and helps us heal, that kind of thing. So for the first 3 verses, it's going to be Sita Ram, and then the last one is Jai Sitaram. And so we'll do that for about, I would say, 7 minutes, and then I'll get into more. I'll start talking more. All right. So actually, no, I'll do the first. I'll go it, and then I'll go like this, and then you guys will do it, and we'll go about 7 minutes. Okay. Sitaram, 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 Jai Sitaram. Sitaram, 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 Jai Sitaram. Sitaram, 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 Jai Sitaram. Jai Sitaram, 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 Jai Sitaram. 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 Sitaram, 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 Jai Sitaram. Sitaram, 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 Jai Sitaram. Sitaram, Sitaram, Jai Sitaram. Sitaram, 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 Sitaram, Sita, Jai Sitaram. Sitaram, 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 Jai Sitaram. All right. So now first off, I'd like to tell you, to keep it honest with you guys, to tell you about how I've been feeling going into this little session, whatever you want to call it, is, so I actually didn't want to do this originally, but I feel like as though I had to, kind of like that intuitive voice or guidance that's guiding me on the right path and saying you should speak. I'm like, okay, but before I did all this, I was going through all the what ifs, you know, and why I shouldn't do this kind of thing. So I was really thinking I shouldn't do this because I'm not qualified. Everybody I've seen do this before has at least some kind of college degree, or they've been doing this for maybe 20 years or so on. And so it kind of felt like a lot of pressure on me to finally start doing something like this, kind of speaking, so on. And so it took a lot of courage to get here. And so I kind of realized I needed to start doing a lot of meditation. And so pretty much I was kind of going through my meditation and really kind of going through the mantra in which I'm doing. So the meditation in which I do is followed by these beads. It's called Japa Mala, and it's which you start at the Guru bead. And you go around each bead and you say a certain mantra. And the one that I'm doing in particularly helps remove obstacles. And so I was like, I better start doing this mantra before I get to here so I can help alleviate some of the pressure. And so it's helping and grounding me before I start to get here. And so so about a month we set this up, and so I was like, okay, that's good. That's more than enough time that I'll be able to get everything I need to do in order to have this talk. And so I was kind of settled, a little grounded, going in my meditations, and so then it started leading up to the final days coming to it. So then you start really getting neurotic about it, and you're saying, okay, we got 5 more days, all right, 4 more days, and then 3 more days, and then 2 more days, and then you wake up, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do this, I have so much anxiety, I don't want to do it. So it took a lot of courage to get here, and it's really great, because seeing you guys here helps reassure me that there's somebody out here that wants to listen to whatever it has to be said. So, what's up? So he wasn't a guru in my time. He was a guru in, I don't know when he was born, but he was a famous teacher. His name is Maharaji. He grew up in India particularly, and he got famous typically or through a person named Baba Ramdas, if any of you guys are familiar with him. His name was Richard Alpert. He was a Harvard professor who taught psychology, and he was also a psychologist. He was also the first person to get fired from Harvard because he was given psychedelics to underclassmen. But so he had gone to India because of the way in which the psychedelics had him he was looking for somebody to help describe the experiences that were happening with him when he was taking the plant medicine. And so he was going through India, and he had eventually ran upon his name was Neem Karoli Baba. I don't think anybody really knew his original name, but he was given the name Neem Karoli Baba because of some of the stuff that he has been doing. See, he was a fully realized being, and what a fully realized being is somebody who is realized their completely true nature and is free from attachment, who is free from desires. And what stood out from him is a lot of the miracles that he was able to perform. And for me at first, that was hard to believe, that kind of thing. And first because I obviously couldn't see him because he was before my time, but Ramdas helped bring that into light through the book Miracle of Love and a book called Be Here Now. And what he published in the book Miracle Now is a book about 1,000 stories of all the experiences that people have experienced with Maharaji. Maharaji was able to perform miracles that most people aren't able to perform. That's what some of the realized beings are capable of doing. In the East, this is more common to be realized beings, or for people to know their true nature and go into these mystical experiences that he had gone through. But see, some of the things he did pertaining to the miracles that he did were such as bilocation, in which he was able to be in 2 different places at once. One he was also famous for doing was materializing food and pretty much having it come to him at will. He would just have to have the thought of it, whatever it was, and it would be there. Now, we can't have somebody like that in the West, particularly because you'd probably end up hanging him, because you don't see that kind of thing. You don't walk up to the ordinary person and just, see that kind of thing. But Maharaji was somebody who was able to pull off those kind of things. So I was kind of figuring out what it is that I should do when I kind of got to this point, or when I first started coming to this spiritual community center. So the first 2 times it was kind of just for the learning experience. But as I was going on, I was like, Jay, I don't know what it is I'm doing here. I don't know what I should be doing. You know, I'm just following that intuitive guide that I would say that we all have, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to let it guide me and take me wherever I go. And so I kind of got that hunch. And when I first walked in here, the first time, it was down in the bottom room. And here he was just talking. And I said, well, what brought here? I was like, oh, I really don't know. I just kind of got the call to come here. And so now I'm here and speaking. And so I was thinking, well, what should I do? What is my part in this kind of dance? Whatever you want to call it. Because in India, they call it a dance. And so I said, what should I do? And what I seem to notice is those who you believe in spirit guides, they will send you messages, different messages through different ways. Now, one of the ways that spirit likes to communicate with me, and they know that I listen to sometimes, not all the time, is through other people, in which sometimes when people are speaking, the spirit guides or angels or so on will use another person, not through exorcism, but it'll kind of implant a thought into them, and they'll say something, and whether or not you hear it is up to you and your consciousness. And so I had a friend who, he said, Gabe, you should speak. And so I kind of took a deep breath, and I kind of just thought, speak? Because I'm not that kind of person. I'm somebody who comes from a lot of anxiety and so on. And so I was like, I can't imagine myself speaking. And so, I held on to that thought. And so I was like, okay, fine. And then a week went on, and then he said it again. He said it again. I was like, okay, obviously Spirit is trying to say something to me. And so I will speak. But now, okay, I've come up with this idea that I should speak. And so I brought it up to Jay. Jay, I think I'll speak. And then he said, okay, just let me know what you want to speak about. And so now I got to think about what is it that I should speak about. And I started to realize that a lot of times when I come here, people kept coming to me after the sessions, particularly the men's group or Equator Night, and they would say, oh, you always come here and you say wise things. And I'm just like, well, I don't want to milk it or anything, kind of, self-inflate my ego and feel really good about that and feel like a wise ass, But if I have to be a wise ass, I guess I'll be that wise ass. But I said, fine, I'll start to speak, but I don't know what it is I should speak about. And I was starting to think, well, people want to hear about truth. And I was like, okay, well, what's the truth? And, the truth about what? And it was like the truth of who we are as a human being. And that's kind of how I grew up, I would say. A big question that I would always ask myself is, what is the truth of all this? That's actually one of the more anxiety-inducing thoughts that I have given myself. I was like, well, I'm only 20 years old. What the hell do I know? Because it's like, I assume what I know, everybody else already knows. But it appears to me that not everybody knows that. We are capable of knowing everything, or capable of knowing whatever it is that you want to know. Not that you know everything now, but you are capable of knowing everything. And so I was like, why isn't it that I know these wise things and, that some people may or may not know? It's not that they don't know them, it's just that they don't hear them right away. And they said, okay. Apparently, because I was thinking, through past lives, you were able to help carry over that wise knowledge, I guess, or certain things, whatever you want to call it. But that's how I kind of got to this point of speaking. I gotta regather my thoughts. See, now I have to go, because I have 2 different levels of thinking. I was like, okay, this is going really smoothly. I'm doing really good. And then I had other thoughts. I was like, uh-oh. I'm drawing blank. I don't know where I'm going. I was like, no, stay away from those thoughts. I want to stay towards those thoughts that are keeping me going. But thank you. But part of I was thinking about spiritual awakening and what that really was and how to describe what that spiritual awakening is. And I had helped through the help of Ram Dass, who I also didn't get on the physical plane, which is also his birthday a few days ago. And so happy birthday to him. I'm also speaking in honor of him because he is somebody who will help awaken to me to what my true nature is. But I would say my first spiritual awakening was a psychic. And the thing with psychics is it's not commonly to be believed in the West because we are people who use scientific methods to arrive at solutions and stuff like that. Well, my father was telling me, well, Gabe, you should come see the psychic. Do a reading, go ahead, because what they do is they tell you about who you were in a past life, what's in store for your future, and, that kind of thing. And it's just kind of hard for me to believe that kind of thing, because who are you? The psychic that I was going to was somebody who was from across the world. She is from Britain, United Kingdom. And so that kind of makes it harder to believe. It's like, how are you supposed to know something about me if I don't even know who you are? So she gave me my first reading, and she said something along the lines of my grandmother who had passed away, and she said a few words which I won't say because it's just something personal, but they closely resonated with me. And so at first I didn't believe it. He was like, she's all full of crap. It's phony, it's baloney, I don't believe anything she's saying. And so then she was predicting things. See, what I come to realize about psychics is it's not personal. It's not them doing the work. They're acting as channels for higher levels of consciousness, or if they're to give you an Akashic record reading, they are getting in tune with their energy, with the Akashic records, and they are allowing what you would call the keepers of the Akashic records to give that information to the person who's given the reading. And so that's kind of how I'm starting to perceive what a psychic is. So they're acting as a channeler for divine information about that person who's getting the reading. So that's what kind of helped me realize what it was all about. Because 6 months later down the line, she also said, you're going to have a woman that comes to you and she's going to offer you a job. I'm like, those are one of the things I really didn't care about at the time. And so I was just like, okay, whatever. And then 6 months down the line, somebody came and then I got a job offer. And I'm just like, wait, hold on. I have to go back. And that kind of broke it through for me. Because it helped me realize that there's a different reality other than this one in which you can know things. I don't know what you would call it, but of reality, it's different from that one. Another one would be different ways in which you could awaken, I would say, is through trauma awakening, in which you are forced to come out of the trauma that you might endure. Because what I notice is you go through different stages in which you are going through suffering, and I'm using that as a spectrum to talk about anxiety or poverty or abuse and that kind of thing. I start to notice different stages in which you are somebody who is just going through it and you're not really noticing what's happening, to where you start to realize that it's starting to take a toll on you, and you start to, at least in my eyes, when I was going through suffering or that stuff kind of thing, I started to ask a lot of questions. And I was starting to ask, well, what's the reason for all this? Why is it so hard? It's so rough and that kind of thing. And so it kind of forces you to come out and see, because you kind of, at first when you go into suffering or acknowledge your suffering, you kind of fall victim into it. You say, why me? You don't understand what I'm going through and stuff like that. And so eventually you either keep that victimization mentality, or you eventually come out of it, is the way in which you come out of that suffering. You awaken out of it and you start to take it more wisely, I would say. Another method into which I would say you come out of awaken is through the use of plant medicine. And for now legal purposes, just so I don't get in trouble, I can't say that I've ever done psychedelics or anything, but from what I've been told is that you were to go through different states of consciousness that are non-ordinary states of consciousness. It's not waking, thinking moments to where you take the plant medicine and you start to feel it coming on, or whatever feeling that might feel like, and then you start to feel lighter. And what I start to notice for a lot of people that tell me that they've taken that kind of thing is that they have a lot of trauma come up, because what this plant medicine is doing is it is raising your vibration. That's kind of the basis of what I'm talking about today, is the vibration, which we are all pretty much energy. And so right now we are very low in density with the way in which we are vibrating. And so what plant medicine does is it helps realign you with the cosmos or the universe. And so whatever goes up must come down. So whatever trauma that you have not dealt with is going to end up coming out. For those of you that have taken plant medicine, probably know that when you do take that kind of thing, you might have a lot of trauma come up, and you'll kind of you are confronted with your shadow self, is what you would call it, and so you have to deal with that. Other than that, the spiritual awakening part on that is you are blown into different things, because what they say is you see visions, and which is clearly true from what I've heard. And you start to feel lighter, and you kind of just, what is happening? That kind of thing. That's how I perceive a spiritual awakening, in which you are starting to realize that there are realities other than this one that don't have to be arrived at scientifically. Which leads me to my next part, in which you talk about different realities. And this is where Ram Dass come in, because I was trying to figure out how I could talk about different realities, or how you understand your true nature. And one of the first people I stumbled upon was a guy named Sadhguru, who is a very famous guru in India. And he introduced, I didn't see him on the physical plane because he's off in India, but he has a mass amount of media in India or on YouTube in which he goes and he talks about all these kinds of things. But one of the first things that I came across is when he's starting to talk about, you are not this body and you are not this mind. Well, for me that was very confusing, because now I'm trying to figure out what he means by that. Well, luckily, I think what you would call synchronicity, because I don't think it was by accident that I ran into Ram Dass. And he was describing what was called the human condition, in which he describes as to why we are not the human body or the human mind. And what he did is he took a control tuner, like a radio tuner, and he took it, and he describes these different states of consciousness. The first being the physical plane, in which you look up here and you see a physical, young, handsome, brown-haired, naive 20-year-old man, the physical level. That's that one. And then you go up a notch onto the second level, which he describes as which we think this is all real. That's another thing. That's one of the words that kind of I carried on and held on to my school years, is that this was all an illusion. That held on with me. I didn't understand it because it just didn't make sense to me, but it held on to me because I was really confused, because what I understand as an illusion is to mean that none of this is real. And so I'm trying to figure out, what are you talking about, this real? I'm feeling the ground. This is real. I don't understand what you mean. And so he started to talk about these different states of reality in which you can perceive, in which you talk about the second one where this all starts to come into play, which is the psycho-social identities, in which you start to describe, my name is Gabe, I'm the speaker, you guys are the audience, you guys all have your roles, you go to work, you have a family man or a parent, you have kids, you are a cook or a chef, or whatever it is you know it by. And then you go into a different state, in which is the third state, in which you would call it the astral level, in which you are known by your archetypal identities. For those of you that are into zodiac signs or horoscopes, such as being a Scorpio and stuff like that. So it pretty much saying that with that kind of thing comes with certain identities. You're supposed to be as a Scorpio, which I am, is supposed to be entirely intuitive or, inclined to spirituality and stuff like that, which I guess makes sense or some of the sort. But then there's the fourth one in which you look into another human being's eyes, and it is if you jump into your soul awareness. And this is the kind of way I'm looking at myself and looking into other people's eyes, because it resonated with me so well, because I kind of thought I was the only person thinking like this. And I look into another human being's eyes, and you look, and then you jump into your soul awareness, and you go beyond the physical, the psycho-social, you go beyond those own levels, and you look into another human being, and you go, are you in there? I'm in here. How did you get into that one? Because it's like, you're kind of questioning what this is all about. It's like, I can't be the only one who's questioning this kind of thing. And when I ran into Ram Dass, it was clear that I was not the only one who had ran into that kind of idea. And so what he described as what in India they call not the body or not the mind is the human condition, in which we have all been conditioned to be somebody ever since birth. And it is through our parents who all thought that they were somebody. You were trained by the best people. We were trained by our parents to see that we are somebody. We are given through the human condition. We are given as soon as we are born. You become separate from the universe. You could call it God, which I hesitate to use that word, because I know if I use that word, people will put a sheaf over themselves. And I'm like, I better be careful, because that will conflict with what I may view. Well, now I'm just using the term God to talk about what you would, just as in terms of creation, just of how this all started. Now, see, the thing about Maharaji was he kind of described God. He didn't describe God. He said, see everyone as God. And so that kind of put me in my place and kind of had to go into a deep reflection, because it's like, well, what's my concept of God now? What do I think about when I think of God? Because all I've been told is about what I've been passed down to, because I realize that most people that have a concept of God is something that's been passed down to them. And so what I've come from a Christian background, so then again, I just been told I'm Christian, so I didn't look too much into it, but that's that. So you believe in Jesus, you believe in that. And so what I realized, or what I think, and what other people who would, I guess you would say, think, is that you see, I'm following those thoughts again, so I'm just like, no, go away. But I would say the concept of God is it's that this is the form. So what I'm going to do is I'm also getting into incarnation as well. But I'm going to try to keep everything in line, because it all comes together into the end. So I'm trying to hold both things together as to what I'm going to talk about next. But the human condition is where you are conditioned into being somebody, because you are told from a very early age, or right away, in which you are born, in which you become separate from the universe, in which you can describe the universe or God being just light or energy. It's just energy, and that's all that is. There is no form around it. This is what you would describe as the form, the human form, or you would describe it as anything that is not aligned, you're separate from the cosmos. You are unmerged from God. I had a lot more than I thought I was going to say. Yeah.
A couple things. What goes up but doesn't come down?
Oh, so when I was saying that, I'm saying when you are going up in consciousness, I'm saying...
That's a riddle. What goes up but doesn't come down?
A riddle?
Yeah.
Are you asking me for an answer, or is it like a...
Your age.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a little biological. Second thing. let me share with you some wisdom in that I always have a belief that you need to leap and the net will appear. Okay. Third thing, I'd be interested in some feedback from the others here to you as far as what kind of some of their thoughts that they're going through right now. What are they thinking from the group?
Is it right now, or would you like that at the end? At the end? Whenever? Okay, we'll do some of that at the end as well then. Okay, so like I was saying, well, we have been trained into being somebody, and that's kind of what perpetuates our illusion of separateness. And so you go into somebody training in which you believe that you are this body and that you are this mind. And so you go into these role identities with everybody else, and you go into that, and it's kind of like putting on a spacesuit, kind of, or putting on a different suit, and everybody else is going to help and confirm that kind of idea with you, because they going around and they acknowledge who you are or who you think you are, because like I said, you're trained by your parents as to who you think you are. They give you a name, they give you age, and so you're fit with it, and you go around telling everybody, my name is this, and my name is Gabe, and so you go around with everybody, and everybody, okay, I agree, your name is Gabe. Next time they say, oh, hey Gabe, how's it going? So they are help keeping you conditioned in the human condition. And so what I want to talk about now is karma yoga. What I want to talk about is karma and what that exactly is. The way that I see it, my interpretation, because I tried to find the best definition in which I could describe that. So what I see as karma is pretty much is action, and it pretty much has to do with anything and everything that you are doing. It goes with your thoughts, and it kind of deals with pretty much the way you are thinking and acting, and it has to do with everything that you're doing. It's like a certain set of desires that are keeping you. That's what it comes in. What I wanted to try to describe in this session is that we are karmic entities that hold on to certain sets of desires. Actually, I did write something. That's why I wrote paper. Because this is one of the things he says. On the one hand, when you regard disturbing emotions as emptiness, your path then turns into an empty. Okay, hold on. On one hand, when you regard disturbing emotions as emptiness, your path turns into taking emptiness as the path and not the disturbing emotions. Thus, your practice doesn't become the short path. On the other hand, if you indulge in the disturbing emotions, thinking that they are something concrete, it's like eating a poisonous plant, and it is the cause which binds you to samsara. Any disturbing emotion that may arise as wisdom the moment you relax, don't deliberately reject it and regard it as a fault. Indulge in it concretely or regard it as a virtue. That actually just helped me realize what else I was going to talk about, which is the idea of samsara, which is seen across as in many Hindu and Buddhist philosophies. See, that's one of the things. I didn't try to stick to one thing. That's one of the bigger things. I feel like I was kind of rebellious as to when people are trying to tell me what to do and how to act. And I kind of always been rebellious, and I wanted to explore. Hinduism was probably one of the harder ones, because if you know about Hinduism, it's the one that displays almost thousands and thousands of gods, and so that kind of came across as something intimidating. So I was like, I'm going to stay away from that one. But then as the more I got into it, it was a little bit more comfortable. But the idea of samsara, it is the idea that we are soul entities that demand a form each time that we have a desires, and it is different, I would say, for each and every one of us, depending on who you are when you were first in this creation, kind of thing. So it's kind of like what Ramdas described. It's like a flower, and it's like a DNA code kind of thing, where lurking in you that has a certain set of desires, and because your soul has a desire, it demands this form, that being the human form, and because that you have that form, it demands that you work out those desires through that form. And so through karma yoga, you are using it to unionize yourself. So yoga pretty much basically means to unionize yourself with the cosmos, or you are trying to realize that you are not separate from the universe, or that you are not separate from God at all, as opposed to be somebody that's disposed to be in something up in the sky. That the idea is that we are not separate from that. So it's through yoga, that the karma yoga, in which you are using your actions to bring yourself closer into unionizing yourself. Now, there are many different forms of yoga which you could get into, such as bhakti yoga, karma yoga, jnana yoga, Raja yoga, in which the first one I was talking about, which was jnana yoga, which talks about self-knowledge and realizing who you are. But one of the ways in which you are to do karma yoga is that through what I was saying, is in which you are not taking the disturbing emotions as something concretely, as not real. You are just looking at them not as, because if you indulge in them as something concretely, it is like in eating a poisonous plant, because it only bites you. It kind of bites back at you if you are to indulge in that kind of emotion. And so instead of doing that, you are kind of creating a different awareness, because most of the time when we do and get caught up in the disturbing emotion, whatever that might be, we are too caught in it. We don't have the awareness to pull ourselves out of it, and instead take it as a virtue and take it as wisdom instead. And so I would say a method in which you were to extricate yourself from that kind of idea is that what Ram Dass talked about when he came back from India is called grace of the guru or guru kripa. Now the thing is, he had a guru in flesh. I did not have that opportunity to have that guru in flesh, but through the stories that he was collecting in miracles of love, he was and which everybody had read about, he was kind of saying that everybody started to email and talk to him and describe, who is this person, because it feels like he's with me all the time. But one of the ways in which you are pulling yourself up out of that and creating that level of awareness is you are using a guide or whoever it might be. It could be Christ. It depended on whoever you look into. It could be Buddha, Krishna, or for me, it would be Maharaji. It could be Abraham Hicks, if you guys have ever heard of them. And you are using them in the situations that are pushing you into disturbing emotions. And so each time a disturbing emotion comes along, you, instead of being caught in that emotion, you are extricating yourself. You are seeing that person in that situation, and you're saying, oh, you got me again. It's kind of like a got you game. Or another way in which he described it is like you were creating an imaginary friend, in which you are using that imaginary person to help free you from suffering and free you from pushing yourself further into the illusion. And so it is through that method that you are helping So what you are doing is you are using the actions of, say you are creating an imaginary friend. For those of you that have ever had an imaginary friend when you're younger that you've probably gotten rid of, you are using them to help free yourself from any disturbed emotion. You are helping it unionizing yourself into the universe and be helping you. Very tricky. See, it's now like my mind is really drawing blank, and so now I'm like, well, now where do I go from here? What's going on?
You were just reminding me, I saw Ron Dusty years ago, but he would have pauses where he would, God, the description that I have or of him, the image, is in this world but not of this world. So when you are stopping to gather thoughts or center or however you would describe it, it just brought that back to me.
Thank you. So it's good to hear feedback from the audience, because then it also helps arise other things in which you could say, and so you could kind of, if you're buying yourself time now and then, just instead of drawing blank. But the imaginary friend, so the way in which you are, I guess I'm going to talk about Guru as well, in which you, the way in which you, this is the way in which he arrived at the idea of imaginary friend, or you are using whoever it is, because not everybody believed in Christ, so you consider that imaginary friend if you want to, but or Buddha. Which the way in which he arrived at that is you are not just using a guru in physical flesh, because the idea of guru is to bring you into the truth of who you are and what this is all about. And what he's pretty much saying is that you don't need a guru in physical flesh. It's only the relation into which you see that person that it is helping you. And so they have a saying in India in which it's called God, Guru, and Self are one and the same. And so it pretty much says that he says that you may or may not ever meet your guru or your guide in this lifetime, as long as you are asking for liberation or impurity. And in that kind of idea, you are using that internal guru. You could even call it you don't even have to call it imaginary friend, but if you want, just for fun, you could call it an imaginary friend. It's that internal guru, that internal voice that is lurking in you, that is guiding you towards liberation, that most people don't acknowledge because they get too caught within the desire realm in which you are jumping from one desire into another. That's one of the bigger ideas in the Buddhist and Hinduistic philosophies, in which instead of drawing your senses outwards from going from one desire to another externally through material riches, you are drawing your senses inward, and you're really asking it is, who am I and what is it that I have been brought on here to this earth for, in particularly. So that's simply what you're doing, is that you're asking for that liberation. And as long as you are, because it's hard to kind of just go on your thoughts as well, because it's like, am I really going on a long path? And so that's why when you were coming here too, it's also reassuring, because other people, it's kind of helping you realize that other people also are having that same kind of thought process as well. And so it helps to become together. But that's kind of simply what you're doing, is you are asking for that internal guidance, and as long as you are doing that, you will be guiding it into that liberation. That's kind of what synchronicity, I would say, has to do with being here as well. It's the idea that rather than things happen at actual cause, it actually has the underlying deep meaning. Like, it's not by accident that any of this is happening, or that we are actually meeting here today. That's the way I see it. You could see it in a way in which everything in your life is happening, and it is happening for a reason. A lighter way in which I could actually describe karma is in which, for those of you who may have heard of her, I don't know if she's made her way into this place yet, but her name was Dolores Cannon, and she talked a lot about hypnotism. She was a hypnotist for many, many years, and she brought people into different states of hypnosis and trances, and she would talk to it wasn't the normal person's waking consciousness while that person was under hypnosis. She was actually dealing with higher levels of knowledge in which she was saying, she was getting her information. The way in which she's seen or perceived this, or she didn't say she was the one who was perceiving this, she just seen herself as the interpreter. So she interpreted it as this being a game kind of thing, the way in which India sees this as divine play. So instead of coming here and taking this, question at yours, to take this as a lesson. You come to Earth and you come here to learn. And everything here, you could see it as a lesson, or you kind of throw it away and you don't see it a lesson. But what they say is a soul, before you incarnate onto Earth, you come with, I would say, markers, or kind of like a timeline going along, in which you are set up to learn different aspects, in which you would say, okay, at the age of 10, I'm going to learn something simple like this, and at the age of 20, I learned something like this. Well, what you are to do is you are supposed to learn from that situation, and if you don't learn, some of the situations are tough, and so you have to learn from that situation. Well, it's like, well, you don't understand. This is what happened to me. So, well, you have to, that's the thing with karma, you have to let it go, that kind of thing. You can't hold on to it, because if you won't learn from that situation, you will reincarnate, because that energy still is not learned. So you have to reincarnate, come back, and learn that lesson. That's the way that she had seen it. But that's the idea of which I'm referring to imaginary friend, the relation to in which you are seeing Guru, because it has nothing to do with that physical person. It's just the relation to which you see that person. And some people don't actually use what you would say the form to guide them that way. They relate through the formless. They'd say it's pretty much guiding them, whatever it is, the eternal source, God source, whatever you want to call it, is guiding them through and bringing them to the liberation. So I think what I'm going to do now, I'm not going to close it out, but what we're going to do is we're going to actually do about 5 minutes more. We're going to do a chanting, and then I'm also going to talk to you guys about a movement, and then we'll get into questions and answers for any of you guys that are probably lost and confused, if any at all, and then I could hopefully clarify some of the things in case I lost some of you guys. So one of the chants that we're going to do is going to be called Shiva Shambho, and what this one does, it is to shatter your limitations of who you think you are, because it's through Nada yoga, which is sound yoga, that it's a different form of yoga that could actually help awaken your chakras. And the term Shiva, and Shambho is just a different name for Shiva, but the way in which you are doing it, what it does is it is shattering who you think you are, and it is destroying everything that isn't true to your nature. And so in doing this mantra, that's what it will help doing. So what the mantra is going to be for the next 5 minutes, it's going to be very repetitive in what's the way we're saying. So it's not going to be something long and something you're going to have to memorize too much. It's just Shiva, 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 Shambho. Shiva, 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 Shambho. So we're going to do that for 5 minutes. All right? So, okay, we'll get that started. Shiva, 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 Shambho. 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 Now before I go on, I just want to say that if you want, you can put emphasis into this mantra as well. So you don't have to do it quietly, but if you want, you don't have to say it loudly. But the more, I would say, more emphasis and the more loudly you are saying it, the more impact that it will have on you. Because what I noticed is that the way I noticed 9 months later is that this mantra was actually really helping me, because it did change the way that I was perceiving this. Okay, I'll get back in a minute. Shiva, 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 Shambho. 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 Mahadeva, sorry, I switched it up. Mahadeva, Shambho. Mahadeva, Shambho. Mahadeva, Shambho. Mahadeva, Shambho. Shiva, 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 Shambho. Mahadeva, Shambho. Mahadeva, Shambho. Shiva, 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 Shambho. Shiva, 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 Shambho. Shiva, 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 Shambho. Shiva, 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 Shambho. I'm going to switch up again. Shiva, Shambho, Shambho. Shiva, Shambho, Shambho. Shiva, Shambho, Shambho. Shiva, Shambho. Shiva, Shambho, Shambho. Shiva, Shambho, Shambho. Shiva, Shambho, Shambho. Shiva, Shambho. Shiva, Shambho, Shambho. Shiva, Shambho, Shambho. Shiva, Shambho, Shambho. Shiva, Shambho. Shiva, Shambho, Shambho. Shiva, Shambho, Shambho. Shiva, Shambho, Shambho. Shiva, Shambho. All right, you guys can come back now. So now what I also want to get into before we do end this, and also when we, yeah. What's up? Okay.
Next time you can go in more depth, next time you go back.
I definitely will be speaking, just to let you guys know. I definitely will, because I know I'm going to have to do this again. Yeah, very well. But did you want me to stop speaking now, or?
Yeah, we're ready at 10 o'clock, I think.
All right, that's fine. I'll just say, what's up?